Hello, Hayes. I have a friend who is great at getting things done, but can also be pretty controlling. And I want to get ahead of this before it becomes a problem at my upcoming wedding. This friend loves to be the first person to know something and puts a lot of effort into being that person for her close friends. I have a sister, though, who's my best friend, and I want her to be the go-to person for my wedding. I also have a future sister-in-law who I'm very close with and love dearly. I think my friend is struggling with my sisters and I being so close when it comes to the wedding, and that they have more details than her, and I feel like I have to address it. I want to say something that acknowledges that she's very important to me and that I'll ask for her help when it's needed. She has great intentions, but to those who don't know her well, they might be put off by the way she goes about getting things done. I believe she feels like she needs to prove that we are close, out of her own insecurity about not being the closest person to me because of my sister. But I feel very uncomfortable by it, and I don't want others to feel disrespected or pushed around. Do you have any advice on how to navigate this conversation with her, or even what to say? Or do I just leave it alone? I've seen some people more recently assign roles to bridesmaids and friends at the wedding, like vibe coordinator or getting ready DJ. Do you think something like that could be helpful? Yours, a new bride. Not the point, not the point. But if a friend ever said to me that my job was vibe coordinator, I don't even know. I just would have trouble taking that seriously. But then again, I'm not somebody who would feel insecure or controlling about needing a special role in my friend's wedding. But that made me laugh. I'm not laughing to disrespect your idea. I do actually think that giving her a role might be a valuable idea, but that made me laugh. Vibe coordinator? Is that a real thing? Okay. Anyway, first of all, congratulations on your engagement. That is very exciting. And I think it is such a crazy phenomenon that when we get engaged, one of the first things that so many, I would imagine that this impacts women more than it impacts men, that one of the first things we think about is our friendship dynamics, and who's going to be included and who's going to behave X certain way and all of that. It blows my mind and I do hate it. And it's one of the things that I'm glad that I was very conscious of the friends in my life at the time I was planning my wedding and the way I was approaching having bridesmaids. I didn't end up having bridesmaids because my wedding got downsized because of COVID and it ended up being a great thing for me. So I didn't have to think about this entirely, though I did only invite one friend to my wedding. So there was a little bit of probably navigating hurt feelings there. It's just crazy to me that this is something that we have to consider. I shouldn't say it's crazy to me. It's not crazy to me, but it makes me sad. So one of the first reactions I have when I read this is why are we friends with people? My first instinctive reaction, I'm going to unpack it in a second, is why are you friends with somebody who makes you anxious like this? Why would you be friends with somebody who, when you are getting engaged, a happy moment in your life that's about you and your partner to be, you are already trying to get ahead of a problem? Why are you friends with somebody who would introduce interpersonal conflict on a day that is about you? Now, that's my instinctive reaction, my perhaps a little bit judgmental reaction, not judgmental towards you even, but I think it reveals the part of me that's a little bit no nonsense and doesn't have time for some things. But when I take a step back, it's not that I don't have time for it. I think it's just something that pisses me off. And even in my friends, my offline friends, the friends I know in person, I know people who have gotten engaged and have friends who make every little fucking detail about them. A friend of mine was going wedding dress shopping and went with some family members, and they had a good friend be personally offended that they weren't invited to the dress shopping. I think that's crazy. I do think that's crazy. I don't think it's crazy to have I don't think it's crazy. I don't think feelings are crazy. Well, some feelings might be crazy. I don't think it's crazy to have feelings about your friends' weddings and the way that they bring up friendship roles and the way they put people on some sort of hierarchy. I have been to weddings of my very close friends, and I have felt oh, these two people were asked to give a speech. I wasn't asked to give a speech. So what does that mean? Does the bride love them more than me? I have those moments too, of course. They do not impact my behavior because I can then separate the feeling I'm having from the reality. And even if I could say, my friend asked so-and-so to speak at the wedding for a lot of reasons that have nothing to do with me. And them speaking at the wedding doesn't have anything to do with our friendship. And even if it did, like, I would never bring that up. I would never let that impact my behavior. But that's me personally. I can't imagine ever saying to a friend, you hurt my feelings that you didn't ask me to speak at your wedding. It's just not it's not the way it's not the way I approach my relationships. I don't think it's crazy to have the feelings, but I think it's crazy to have the feelings and then to make somebody else's day about you. That's what I think is immature. I shouldn't use the word crazy. I'm withhold from using the word crazy. I think it's immature. I think it's self-centered. I think it's short-sighted. Surely there are some things that you can bring up when somebody else is getting married. There are certainly dynamics that can be addressed and problems that can be worked through. But something like someone feeling insecure that your sister, your family members are more involved, like, why be friends with that person? And maybe, I guess I am asking that directly to you, bride. What did you call yourself? What was your sweet little name? A new bride. New bride. Maybe that's a good place to begin, both so we can think about how we want to proceed with this relationship, but also maybe to like ground us and ground you in, I don't know, maybe it's just a good place to start to think about the positive things that this friend brings to the table. And if you can't find any positive things, well, then that's another story. But why are you still friends with this person? Usually, every single human being is going to have positive qualities and is going to have some areas for growth. And even, are all of our negative qualities areas for growth? I think we're also just going to have some things about us that are peculiar, quirky. Some people won't like them, and they don't necessarily need to be things that are fixed. They're just who we are. We all have them. I certainly do. But for her to have this type of quality that when you get engaged, you're already thinking about how you need to manage her, essentially. Like, what are the other qualities that make that friendship worth it? Can you identify them? I know you said she's really good at getting things done. There's got to be more reasons than that. Because maybe once you identify what those positive things are, one, I think we can use them to your advantage to give her maybe a role for the wedding. But also, this could be, if you really are close and you have an open, honest, emotional, intimate relationship, you could have a very frank conversation with her about what you're noticing and what you're feeling. Like, one of the things that you love about her is how involved she is. I mean, I don't know, actually, as I'm saying this loud, it's like, how do you say this to somebody? How do you say, I know you take a lot of pride in being your friend's number one person, but for this day, my sister's my number one person, and I don't want there to be any butting heads. So can you respect that? Like, I don't know how you actually say that, especially when it hasn't happened yet. I don't think you're wrong to want to get ahead of the problem, but part of me wonders, I'm curious what you guys think about this. Part of me wonders if it's not something to address until something has happened. Because otherwise it becomes this, like, you addressing it with her, if she hasn't done anything weird yet, becomes this, all of a sudden it's like you've been noticing this thing about her. It might feel very affronting, confrontational to her to be like, well, are you talking about a quality of mine that you've been noticing for the last 8 years of our friendship and you've never brought it up, but now you're bringing it up? What the fuck? Like, that might feel like a real breach of trust if it's not reacting to something specific. Like, if someone came to me, like, I can't even think of a relevant insecurity of mine, but if one of my close friends came to me and we had never talked about this pattern of mine before, and they were like, okay, Hayes, I know this thing is coming up, and I just something I've noticed about you is that you want to be in control, and I know that you want to be in control, but I really don't want you to be in control here. So can you just keep a lid on it? I'd be horrified. It's like, well, you and I have never talked about my control. So you've just been noticing this control thing. So a part of me is like, maybe you can't, it's a hard thing to get ahead of directly. I don't know. Maybe we can push back on that. I think that giving her a job could be a great approach, but like, what is the job that you'd want to give her? And maybe could this friend be a helpful partner to your sister? I know I also get a sense of perhaps some people-pleasing tendencies, and I say that with love. I also have many people-pleasing tendencies, and I think they can really come out at your own wedding. You want everyone to be happy. I'll never forget, like at my wedding dinner, there were 20 of us. Even with 20 of us, I remember looking around the table, wanting to make sure that everybody looked happy and comfortable and not bored. And this is like 20 people, my family members, and yes, there are some complicated family dynamics that definitely impact the way that I experienced that day and the way I felt looking around the table. But like my friend, two of our closest friends, and our family, and I still felt that. So I think it's completely natural, especially if this is a tendency of yours, to like want to make sure that your sister and sister-in-law and anybody else who's going to be involved isn't triggered by this friend, but also trust that they can handle it probably. Like your sister can probably handle your friend. I don't think that means that your sister has to handle it alone, but I want you to like take a breath and trust that the way your friend's insecurities and the way they show up in the wedding planning, like your sister and your sister-in-law can like take care a little bit of that, and they can deal with a little bit of a difficult personality. Trust that the people in your life are like willing to do that for you. And I know obviously what we want is for everybody to get along and everybody to like each other. But there's always a weird dynamic in the wedding party, I think. Is that true? Probably. I think there's always the same way when you go on like a bachelorette or you go on a trip with a bunch of girls who are friends, who aren't friends, not even just girls, couples trips, whatever. I can't speak to going on an all-male trip, but I imagine, actually, I've heard from Brian when he goes on some trips with a bunch of dudes. I think it manifests a little bit differently, but it's still certainly there. There's always some relationship tensions that arise when you're going to be with people for a long amount of time that you don't usually spend time with. Your sister and your sister-in-law can handle it. Now, I don't want you to be stressing about it and you to be managing it. But just trust that they got you. I know she's not writing to me, but I know I came in a little hot in the beginning. I'm reading the line where you said, I believe she feels like she needs to prove that we're close out of her own insecurity about not being the closest person to me. It does still surprise me when friends feel in competition with siblings. It surprises me when friends are in competition with siblings because they're such different roles to me. It is actually hard for me to comprehend that a person would think they're in competition, say, with my sister. It's the same way I don't think you can compare a friend to a romantic partner, to like a person you're married to. Not because I'm not ranking them. They're just completely different relationships. And if you have a sibling and you are in good standing with your sibling, you have a good relationship, it's like they often are the person that's more involved in the wedding. In fact, I think it would be where I can really understand the comparison, insecurity, emotional challenge coming up is when the sibling thinks that they're close with their sibling, but the person getting married wants a friend to be more involved than the sibling. That like in my brain makes more sense to me. And I'm not saying that to invalidate the feelings of your friend or anybody who's felt this way. I have felt what I think are irrational-ish, defensive feelings before at people's weddings. But it's like unfair to yourself. It makes me sad that anybody would feel bad about themselves when their best friend makes their sister their maid of honor instead of them. It makes me sad. Why? It makes me sad that people would let weddings and the various complicated familial decisions you make on your wedding. It makes me sad to think you'd let that affect your friendship and the way you feel about yourself. You said that you think she's struggling with it, and I'm curious now, I alluded to this before, do you think she's struggling because of all of your history with her and everything you know about her, or do you think she's struggling because something has already happened or she said something? If there's something specific that you can address, I think you could maybe start it with not like confronting her about her behavior, but acknowledging the soft spot. Like maybe something like, the other week when we were talking about the wedding and I mentioned that my sister's going to be the maid of honor, or I mentioned some of these details, I felt like you felt bad that I hadn't told you about it yet. And I want you to know that you are one of my closest friends. And I never want you to feel slighted in this process. You know, my sister and I have a completely different, my sister's my sister, and she's gonna be very involved. And that doesn't sound great. My sister's my sister, and I don't want there to be any sort of comparison going on between the two of you. And I just want you to know I love you. Like maybe you could say something like that and see how she responds. I think I'm thinking of some people in my life, former life, who remind me a little bit of the way you're describing your friend. I don't know how they would have reacted to that. They probably would have denied having any feelings about it. So your friend might not be able to practice self-awareness or be honest about her feelings in that moment. What I would love, I think a great outcome could be, thank you for saying that. I was feeling kind of weird, but I don't want to feel in competition with your sister. I don't want to feel threatened, even though I weirdly did. Like that would be such a beautiful, honest moment, but it's really hard to be honest like that. The only way I think that you can maybe create an opportunity for her to be honest like that is by approaching the topic with sensitivity and not asking for her to change her behavior yet, but like you being the bigger woman for a moment. And you're not wrong, and like you shouldn't have to do this. It's not your responsibility to make your grown adult friend not feel threatened by your relationship with your sister. But I think it's the nice thing to do for a friend you care about and for somebody you love, because that is what friendship is. Like if you're going to choose, if you've thought about this friendship and you're like, you know what, I love her enough, she brings enough value to my life that I can overlook this behavior of hers. If you get there, then I think you as the friend, that is what we do for friends. We look the other way sometimes, or we not look the other way, but we don't confront every little thing. We give them the benefit of the doubt. We suck it up and give them space to have their baby reaction if they need to. That is sometimes what being a good friend is. Calling it a baby reaction. Reel it in, Alexandra. It's not a baby reaction, but we give our friends grace is what I'm trying to say. If you have decided that this is a friend that you want to keep. I do think that this type of behavior, though, is something that could end friendship, which is, I'm not sure if people always recognize that. Like the way you show up for people in your life at their major milestones does impact the relationship going forward. If I had a friend who gave me a really hard time about when I got married, so I invited one of my friends. Brian and I each invited one friend, and we made those decisions based on a lot of different factors. But I was really nervous about telling other people who I was really close with. And for me, it wasn't even like, oh, this person is a better, like my friend who I invited is one of my closest friends. But it wasn't just a matter of this is my best friend more than every best friend, and that's why I'm doing it. Which is hard for people to wrap their head around, because sometimes when we look at people's decisions from the outside, that's how we interpret them. They're like, oh, Hayes asked this person, so they are the best friends of all of the friends. Oh, my friend asked somebody else to speak at the wedding. They are better friends than everybody else here. That's not the whole story. That's never the whole story. I had a lot of really close friends who I shared this news with, and if any of them I had friends who were sad and whose initial reaction wasn't only, oh my God, of course, no big deal. Like people were sad, but nobody like was angry with me or confronted me about it or made me explain the choice. And if I had friends at the time who took what was a really challenging situation, it ended up really working out, but who took like a really challenging personal situation and made it about them to me, I think it would have been hard for me to move on from that. Now that's like me personally. I think I probably would have had room and space for someone to be like, wow, this makes me, I don't know, actually. Maybe that's like a shortcoming of mine, and I think it would have been okay for someone to talk privately about the decision, and maybe friends did. But it's like, I don't think it would have been fair to put that on me. I don't think it would have been fair to put that on me, because I don't know if I could have, I don't know if I could have explained the decision to them in a way that made them feel better, or in a way that was really like, I don't know if I could have explained it in a way that would make sense to them because it made sense to me. In the same way that if a friend is going to make you explain that your sister is the closest person to you in your life, like that's a weird thing to make a friend explain. It's sort of just an unspoken, I think it's just unspoken. It's an unspoken understanding. I would never make my friends explain to me that their relationship with their sister is different than their relationship with me. Ooh, I'm really feeling my espresso right now. My lord, my lord. But I do think that the jobs could be really interesting. I don't know if it's so much like a job on wedding day, but maybe there's something that you could give her to plan. Like maybe she could be in charge if you're having a bachelorette, for example. Maybe she could be in charge of communicating, of doing the grocery list, or like you and your sister together can come up with tasks for this friend, especially if you know that she's good at getting things done. You can count on her when she has the task, when she has a job. Like, give her the job. Who cares? Who cares if the friend has a big role in one of these events if you trust her? Like, I'm sure your sister can. Hopefully your sister doesn't also feel territorial here. Like you and your sister-in-law can have a private conversation about jobs that you want to give this friend. Maybe there's things that they don't really want to do or that they aren't so good at. Maybe your friend is really good at dealing with like the money, the financial aspects of the bridesmaids and the bachelorette and all the things. Maybe she can be in charge of getting everybody's Venmos and keeping track of what everybody's spending. Maybe she can be in charge of getting the cute, like Stony Clover-esque bags with everybody's initials on them or whatever it is you want to do for your bridesmaids. There's no harm in giving her something to do. You can make it easier for yourself in some ways by giving in a little bit, by feeding into her personality. Again, if she is somebody you love and somebody that you are making a deliberate choice to be in your life, you're not just including her because you think she's going to have a, capital M meltdown if you don't. So to wrap it all up, if I were in your shoes, I would probably either, if she had done something specific, I would maybe bring that up. But I would bring it up in a way that doesn't attack her or ask her to change, but more give her space to talk about her feelings. Even if those feelings are not something you're happy about or you agree with, that's maybe how I would begin. I'd also, yes, give her a job. Like I'd examine whether I'm being a little bit stubborn in this at all. And if I do really love her, after thinking about how I feel about this friendship and how I want it to be my life moving forward, with my sister's help, we would come up with a plan for this friend. That's part of what your sister being your maid of honor or your sister being your best person, that's part of what you do together. Come up with a job for her, come up with a plan that takes her strengths into account. And then I would also let my sister, let my family, let my sister and my sister-in-law, let them handle it. Trust that they can handle some of her chaos. I'd prep them and be like, I love her. You guys are going to be annoyed with her a little bit, but can you guys just handle it and keep it off my plate? That's how I would go about this. I'm so excited for you. Congratulations on your wedding. Do not let this, as hard as it is and as understandable as it is, do not let this become a source of drama or tension in a day that's about you and the person you're marrying. Okay, we'll be right back for part 2 of the episode.